ACP Technologies President Ben Pearce joins this week to discuss Kaseya's comments at Robin Robbins Boot Camp with ChannelPro's Colleen Fry, plus news from ConnectWise and a story about big results from small teams, plus a special guest interview with N-able's Dave MacKinnon on security threats targeting MSPs. It's ChannelPro Weekly, number 222. Who are you going to call? Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 222. Yes, episode 222 won't happen again until episode 333, whenever that is. Maybe we can ask Rich to let us know at what point in the future that will be. So landmark episode today, awesome stuff. My name is Matt Whitlock. I'm technology editor, online director, and your host of this particular and fine show for the folks out there like you. And who are you? You're the VARs, the IT integrators, the MSPs, the MSSPs, the IT consultants, well, if you work with other businesses and you have and you work with lots of acronyms all of the time, like IT and VAR and MSP, and I don't know, there's thousands of them, you are probably in the right place. If you are a professional window washer, you're in the right place too, because we like everybody to come and join the show and laugh and learn with us as we go through these awesome topics as well. So joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, the guy who keeps the trains and planes and all the different public transportation things that we do here at ChannelPro running on time, executive editor Rich Friedman.
So I've got a suggestion, Matt. Rather than keep people waiting, let's make the next episode 333, and then we'll skip back to 223 after that.
Boy, that would really throw people off, wouldn't it? That would be absolutely hilarious. So given the current recording schedule, I think we'll be in episode 333 somewhere in the next 3 years. So we'll have to keep everybody up to date on when that's going to be. But good to see you, Rich. It looks like you're back home.
I am. Yeah. And yeah, I over the course of the next 5-6 weeks, I'm not going to be here a whole ton, although I will be here for at least some of the podcasts that we do. But yeah, I'm home this week.
That's always nice to stop at home and do some laundry, I'm sure. But where are you headed out in the near future?
So next week, actually, when we do our podcast, I'll be back home. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm at an Eaton conference, the power quality folks in Florida, and then a TD Synnex event the week after that, the Ingram Micro Cloud Summit the week after that, and a lot of good events coming up.
Racking up those frequent flyer miles for sure. There's also another good event coming up in May. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, actually, it's the best event of all because it's ours. And that takes place May 4th and 5th in Chicago, Schaumburg, if we're getting technical about it. That is the second of our 6 SMB Forum events for 2022. And we are going to have all sorts of awesome content, folks, about everything that is top of mind for you right now. We've already done the first of those 6 events in Newark, New Jersey some weeks back. So we've sort of flight tested this content for you, and we know that it's good and it's relevant. We're going to be talking about security and employee recruiting and retention and thinking your way through the strategic changes in the managed services marketplace and navigating M&A. Colleen Fry, who's going to be joining us momentarily, has a great session on launching a Microsoft Azure-based practice. So lots and lots of really great content for you. You can, there's still time to sign up for that. Events.channelpronetwork.com is the place to do that. And the beginning of June, we're going to be in Dallas. Later in the year, we're going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then Washington, D.C., and then Southern California. So events.channelpronetwork.com is where you would go to sign up for all of those events, too, where we are going to have that same tremendous content for you.
Yeah, and I can make that a little easier for folks, too. If you're listening, go to channelproforum.com/Chicago. That'll take you right to the registration page. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and the bell and all the other buttons that Google makes you press on YouTube these days, because there's lots of them. But I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen. You can scan that QR code. That will also take you right to the registration page for Chicago. Use promo code CPVIP. That will get you in the door for free. And it may be free to you, but believe me, you're going to walk away with a lot from this event. Really, really good stuff. And of course, there's always lots of prizes and other things going on that we have as well. So you do not want to miss it. Join us in Chicago. Absolutely. Rich, I'm also excited to say we are not alone. We are going to be joined by Colleen Fry. We'll get to her in just a second, but we have another great guest host joining us today. He is the president and founder of ACP Technologies, which is an IT service and consulting company in the Buffalo, New York area, as well as San Antonio, Texas. He's a distinguished IT professional and a problem solver, as illustrated by numerous successful consulting contracts with both government and private sector businesses. Please welcome Mr. Ben Pearce. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks for having me. I wish I had some witty comments on your episode numbers, but I don't. I'm not as clever as you guys, but thanks for having me.
Well, it's an episode number to be on to be memorable. That's for sure. This one will stand the test of time. Ben, it's awesome that you're here. I'm excited to have you on. I know you're really big in the security space. You're going to have a lot to talk about there, but tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about ACP Technologies.
So we've been around since '97. We've primarily been in the Buffalo, New York area, which covers what we call Western New York and out to Central New York. We're right across the river from Canada. So we also have some client interaction going up past Toronto. So I always joke and say we're a Canadian tax-paying company also. And then we have our brick and mortar office down in San Antonio, Texas, which, is a much different world than doing business in New York. And we enjoy when we can go down there when it's snowing here to go to San Antonio. And San Antonio, just quite honestly, is just a faster growing market than the Buffalo area. But things are well on the MSP side, and we did start our MSP division almost 2 years ago. So we've been ramping up. And again, the biggest growth of what we do is on the security side. And I don't see that coming to an end anytime soon.
So first question is, can you pay your Canadian taxes either in maple syrup or Tim Hortons gift cards? Do they allow that?
Yeah, Tim Hortons gift cards. That we just ended the roll up the rim contest. So yeah, it's I think it's just as hard to do business with the Canadian government, even on the tax side, as it is in the U.S. or New York. But things are good. It's I think what happens here, especially in Buffalo, is as I probably have said many times, Buffalo companies migrate the Interstate 90 to Rochester and Syracuse and Albany. And I think the more aggressive or global companies go over the border and go into Canada and Toronto. So that's not that we mind doing that. It forced us to do business there, and it's good though. It's all good.
Yeah. So you have your business has been around for a long time. It was started in 1997, but there's an article that we have on the ChannelPro network.com website that talks about how that business kind of grew and scale, and some of the things that you had to do to actually be a successful business person. You want to tell us a little bit about that journey? Yeah,
it's probably not as uncommon as most technical people that get into business. Started out working in some of our larger corporations here in the Buffalo area. And as either I moved on or moved on to different companies, a lot of times they were retaining my services. And so in a sense, I guess I became a consultant, but then they wanted to buy product and, computers and networks and wanted support. And it slowly evolved into, me being smart and not working 80 hours a day and getting people to do the work with me. And it's really how ACP became a company or became an organization. And we really adopted the MSP model pretty early on. I think it was probably around 2004, 2005. And so I like to believe we're a mature MSP. And, as time progressed, we obviously, grew the MSP part of it. We had always hosted or, we were in the cloud in the early 2000s also. We had environments that we hosted in data centers. So not to say we invented the cloud, but we were part of the cloud early on and just grew it from there. And, the reality is we give great service. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And our trust amongst our clients is what they believe in. And and so it's a simple business philosophy for us, and our business grows every year. It has from day one, and it continues to grow. The MSSP side, or the security side, is, it's been a new endeavor over the last few years, and we continue to refine it, and we continue to partner with companies or organizations that help us refine it. And it's good. It's, we know we're providing a great service and protection to the clients that understand what we're doing for them. And and again, don't see it coming to an end anytime soon, because it's the threats keep happening, and every client needs to be doing something, and that's what we try to promote. Sometimes we try to promote, we know this is what you need to do, so do it. And unfortunately now it's sometimes promoting, we have to threaten you to do it, because if we don't, you're going to have issues. And everybody out there knows that, and that's how ACP keeps just growing year after year.
Awesome. Well, it's a great story, and we'll make sure that we link to the story from the show notes for this particular episode. So, folks, anything we talk about here on the show, we were usually going to link back to an article or on the site where we have more information, or you can get more insight, take a deep dive. So if you're on YouTube, open the description area. Those links will be there. If you're listening, you can open up the description area on your phone. Usually it's in there, or you can go to channelpronetwork.com, find the episode sheet for episode 222 in this case, and we will have that for you there. And we might talk a little bit more about that journey and that history in part 3. But we've got a lot ahead, and I want to get rolling, because we only have our special other guest here for a short period of time before she apparently will have bouncers throw her out of her hotel room. So we got to get to it quick here. We got a lot ahead. We're going to be talking with executive editor, managing editor Colleen Fry about her eyewitness take at the Robin Robbins boot camp that just happened, including the Kaseya CEO that took the stage there and kind of was addressing some stuff. We have another story called Small Teams, Big Results. Sounds like it would be of interest to just about anybody listening. We've also got an awesome interview with Dave MacKinnon from N-able. He's the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer. We're going to be talking a little bit about threats against MSPs. Great conversation. You're not going to want to miss that, and a whole lot more. So strap in, folks. Here we go. The first story that we're going to talk about is the one about the Robin Robbins bootcamp, and joining us to go through her experience there and talk about what she heard and saw is managing editor Colleen Fry. Welcome, Colleen.
Hey, Matt. Thanks. Hello, Rich and Ben. Great to see you. I know you're going to cover a few years ago, so it's great to see you again.
And Colleen, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. Anytime I see your name pop up that you're going to be joining us, I always get excited because it's always a blast when you're on. For those who may have not caught a previous episode with you on it, tell the audience just a little bit about you and what you do at ChannelPro.
So I'm the managing editor here. I write, I edit, I make sure the issues get out on time and such. Also run some conference sessions and cover some events, as I'm doing here today at the Robin Robbins IT Sales and Marketing Bootcamp, which is still ongoing as we speak.
Fantastic. Well, Rich, let me send it to you first to kind of set up the story and kind of guide what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, the huge story last week was that Kaseya is buying Datto. We spoke about that a whole bunch on the last episode of the show. Since then, I've posted a few stories. One was based on an interview I did with Fred Vacola, the CEO of Kaseya. Another one had some thoughts from Kaseya competitors. Another one had some thoughts from 3 Datto partners. But Colleen is at the Robin Robbins Bootcamp event in Nashville now, and I know you can tell us how many people are actually there, Colleen. But I know they were expecting 1,100 people, and so this was like it was a great opportunity for us to get your thoughts on Kaseya Datto for 2 reasons. One, as Matt was alluding to, Fred Vacola flew into Nashville. This was sort of a last-minute addition to the agenda. He went to Nashville. He was on stage. He addressed some of the questions that people have about that transaction, and you were there. You wrote a great article about that. And then also, you've just had a ton of opportunity to talk to partners, a week plus on from that bombshell going out, and just get the feel for what people are thinking, saying, move. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Colleen. Just give us a sense for what it's been like at that event this week, specifically around Cassandra Datto, but then anything else that kind of jumps out at you?
Mhm. Well, I will say it's probably close to 1,000 attendees that are here, so it's a pretty full house. And opening night was packed, and so the Cassandra CEO was on stage. And Robin actually delayed her usual, what's new announcements until the next day to make some time for the Cassandra Q&A with her. And so I would say, he spent some time reassuring the crowd that, Datto wasn't going anywhere. They were going to maintain the 2 product lines. They were going to maintain Datto as an autonomous unit, just like other acquisitions they had made. Robin did press him a bit on Cassandra's 3-year contracts, which I guess they're known for, and that got a lot of noise from the crowd when they started talking about that. That seems to be the biggest bone of contention, for folks about the acquisition. A lot of folks don't like contracts, even though they acknowledge that they, their MSP clients, they often sign them to a 3-year contract, but I guess they don't like being forced into it. In general, so that was the biggest concern people had. Another concern Datto partners have is losing the culture and losing, that close connection with the folks that they've worked with. So, but everyone says that kind of remains to be seen. Sitting with a gentleman at lunch today who's also a longtime Datto partner, and his concern was support. Will they cut back on support? So everyone is just kind of remains to be seen. Culture is another thing. Will the cultures be the same? Because they're kind of different. With Cassandra has an enterprise side of the house as well, and Datto folks wonder if they understand, the channel as well. So those are kind of the general impressions. Other folks who are also Datto partners said to me, that's just life. There's a lot of M&A going on now. You just have to roll with it. Or if, your main worry is a 3-year contract, there seems to be bigger things you should worry about. So kind of a mixed bag of reaction. A lot of people are the jury's still out for them.
So if they wanted to make everybody happier about 3-year contracts, I guess they could stand up on stage and say, hey, you know what? We're going to do 5-year contracts, and then let everybody get all angry and then say, oh, okay, we'll go back to 3. And then everybody be like, oh, yay, 3-year contracts. That's way better.
Folks, 3 years.
Right. So a funny thing that did happen though, so the next day was when Robbins made, some announcements of what's new, what's changing. And of course, a year or so ago, during the pandemic, they launched a media company. And of course they do virtual events because her event had to switch virtual. And so she told us, and when she and Fred Vicola were behind stage, he was talking to her about, oh, you do virtual events. This is a great event, it's run so well, it's very slick, and he contracted her to do events for them. And she said, and I signed him to a 3-year contract. So that got a lot of
done.
Do you want to know what's new at Technology Marketing Toolkit as well?
Well, I do want to I want to go back to the Fred Vicola onstage interview just briefly, because Robin announced that she was adding this to the agenda last Friday.
Yeah.
And she was, as you would expect, she was super excited about it, and a lot of people who were planning to attend were excited about it. And then on Monday, you pointed my attention to another video that she had posted. And it was like 6.5 minutes long, and the gist of it basically was, folks, I'm counting on you to be professionals. I know there's some emotion out there about this. And if I remember right, there was even a quote in there where she said at one point, there are going to be no Will Smith moments here. So, I mean, she must have been hearing something that suggested to her, that it could be a contentious atmosphere there. What was the mood like in the room for that interview?
It was really very respectful. When she pressed him on some of the things that they have concerns about, like contracts, they would applaud that she asked the question, but everybody was very respectful. I did not, throughout the event hall, see any t-shirts or signage that indicated anything otherwise. And yeah, they were very respectful. So after that video went out, my conclusion is probably more people are afraid of her than Fred Vicola.
So yeah, tell us a little bit, what is the news from TMT?
So she's kind of rebranding in a subtle way. So the logo that had the big RR in the middle for Robin Robbins, Keep It Real, is changing to TMT in the middle. And she says because it's part of a broader expansion of what they're going to be offering, their clients. So moving beyond marketing to really help their clients with other aspects of their business. So the TMT now is the marketing team, or as she joked, the money team. But she's keeping the TMT initials and getting rid of the RR. As part of that, she's launching an MSP Launch Academy to work with startups and micro MSPs to really help them develop all the aspects of their business. And then in doing that, she's bringing aboard some folks to grow the team. So she's created what she's calling experts in residence. And a lot of these folks are, MSPs that we at ChannelPro know well, that are coming on board in some capacity to lead different programs. And one change too is the toolkit, which she's been known for, from the very beginning. The technology marketing toolkit was a product. It was a one-time purchase. It's becoming a membership. So like so many other, services, now it's a TMT membership. And that's kind of the lowest level of membership. And some of the experts in residence, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read my notes here. Mike Bizarre, who will be on our cover in May. He's still staying with his MSP, but he's coming on as an expert in residence to work with one of our other cover story folks, Will Nobles, on the Launch Academy. And I'm trying to see who else I got here. Fatima Fowler and a couple of other folks are going to be leading a new accountability group that they're creating. And Fatima was on our cover a couple of years ago, sold their business in upstate, or combined their business in upstate New York with several other MSPs to create Iconic IT, which sold recently too. So she's no longer with the new company. Her husband, Mike, is the COO of the new company, and she's working part-time with Robin. And so a few other folks, this expert in residence program is an expansion of her team, and to reach out and help their clients with other parts of their business besides marketing.
So, anything else, anything unusual, interesting that you kind of picked up on the show floor from the attendees and so on? So we know now what Robin was talking about, which is interesting, and we know what happened around the Cassandra Datto acquisition. Anything else at the show that kind of stood out to you?
So most folks are saying that they had a good year last year, which is in keeping with what our State of the Channel survey pretty much found. The ones that had the best years said they really kept their pedal on the gas. Even though they were a little bit scared about what will happen during and after the pandemic, they just kept doing what they were doing, and they grew their businesses. They were quite happy about it. Opportunities that I think Robin is identifying for her clients are in cybersecurity, of course, still, and compliance, working more with compliance. So yeah, folks are pretty upbeat, and I think bodes well for the year ahead.
Very cool. I love, we've talked a little bit about the Datto acquisition on the show last week in particular, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about a little bit more, but I'd love to get Ben's opinion since we're kind of talking about it now. What are your thoughts on the whole Datto acquisition and some of the comments that Fred McColl made on stage?
Yeah, it doesn't concern me in a negative way. We've been a long-term Datto client or customer. We think they have a great product. I mean, it'd be hard for me to believe an acquisition at that level where something bad or something is going to go away, meaning, the Datto product, maybe the name changes, but I would think that product is still viable, even if it's called something else. I mean, I guess I just don't have a real concern. The concern is always, support is going to get bad or something's going to happen with support, but that's with every acquisition. I mean, I think those are just the common comments that are always made. I do find it funny though with the 3-year agreements. I mean, that's what we strive for all day long, and so why people would be, pushing that out as something bad, I don't understand. But I guess I just don't, they've been a great partner to us, and hopefully we've been a great partner to them. We are not a Kaseya user, or we don't use that product, but I really, even talking to our rep a few weeks back, I think they knew something was going on, and I just don't have any uncomfortable feeling about it. So to me, I guess it'd be something positive.
If I may jump in again, so Rob Ray was a big presence on stage, the Datto channel chief. He was on a couple panels. He, did a sponsorship talk. Went to a big party here, and the Datto Hotel was part of the gangster themed scenery that she had. And he assured the crowd that Datto's not going away. DattoCon is happening. They've got some stuff under development that they'll be announcing at DattoCon. So it kind of sounded like full steam ahead for them. And I think that Fred Ficcolo is really trying to, reassure everyone not to worry.
Yeah.
He had a very nice, way about him. He also announced a new product for Kaseya, which I wrote about in my article, a new AI engine that they'll be adding to the platform, named after his dog Cooper. So I think, and he also fell on his sword about the breach and said, we've made mistakes, which he's acknowledged publicly, and we'll probably make them again, and we're going to do our best to earn your trust.
I think Rob Ray's a big presence no matter where he is on stage, and
it's true.
Met him, so.
It's true.
That product you were alluding to, Colleen, like scratched an itch for me. I was so glad to see that in your story, because when I was interviewing Fred, he was trying to explain the logic behind this deal in the context of the 4 big strategic pillars at Kaseya. And he said, we've got this platform of products. It's complete, it's integrated, it's reasonably priced, and it's got built-in intelligence. And then and I was thinking, built-in intelligence, like what? I mean, there's a certain amount of that everywhere, but it's like, what's he talking about there? When did that? I've been covering these guys for years. When did that become core to their strategy? And then it was like, oh, got it. When you wrote about that. So I guess my guess is we'll learn a lot more about this tool at Kaseya's Connect IT event in June, but it sounds like something that's going to be kind of watching how you use Kaseya products and offering up tips on things that you could be doing but aren't, and just trying to optimize your experience of these solutions. Is that what it sounded like?
Right. He said it's kind of been a pet peeve of his. He's been in the software business a long time, that, people buy these products and they have so many features, and you end up using such a small fraction of them, or not using, it to its full extent. And so his mission was to try to make it easier for people to get more out of their product in an easier way. So my understanding is this will kind of point out, like, hey, you haven't used this feature, here's how to do it. Or, hey, there's a new release, but you haven't read the release notes yet, so maybe you haven't, upgraded yet. Things like that will, try to get, more for your money, I guess.
Well, very good. Listen, it sounds like there was a lot that you got out of it, and a lot to talk about. Ben, we didn't really talk about any of the Robin Robbins. Do you use Robin Robbins for any of your marketing, or? We
do not subscribe. I'm aware of her programs, and but yeah, we do not participate with Robin Robbins.
Okay, no worries. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts on any of that, but I suppose we should probably move on to our next story. But first, I want to give a big thank you to Colleen Fry for joining us and sharing that with us. We'll hopefully get you out of here before the bouncers knock on your hotel room door and drag you out into the streets and throw your luggage all over the place. So thanks for coming on. We hope to have you back again in the future.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Rich. Nice to see you, Ben. My suitcase is by the door. I'm going to grab it and fly. See you next
time. Travel safe.
Thank you much. We'll see you later. All right, we're going to move on. We've got, I don't think we have any other news this week, Rich. But we've got another story called Small Teams.
Well, we do.
We have
do
more news?
One. There is one news story, though. There should be.
I don't. Oh, you know what? It kind of got in the show notes. It kind of like clumped together with the other one. I didn't realize that was a separate link. So there is one more news story. We are going to talk about something that ConnectWise is introducing. What are they introducing?
Yeah, speaking of Cassandra Datto competitors, we did get a story out of ConnectWise this week, which was interesting. So they have added a new incident response service. And basically that means, their security analysts, they have something like 160 security experts on staff at their security operations center. If you take advantage of their incident response service on a 24/7, 365 basis, their team can kind of leap into action to help you with something impacting one of your customers or something impacting you. And later in the show, we're going to talk with Dave MacKinnon from N-able about a threat activity targeting MSPs. So this could be something that an MSP needs to assist with an incident impacting them. So you call them up. The first thing they do is install what they're calling a control tool on the affected environment. It's basically an EDR solution that they've created alongside SentinelOne and Bitdefender. And they're just basically trying to isolate any device, any resource that has been compromised, so that they can then install what they call the analysis tool, which will go out and look for indicators of compromise and inspect log files and do all the things the security pros do in an incident response kind of scenario. And then they will clean things up. They'll remediate the situation. When everything is done, they will kind of they'll monitor the environment for a month after the situation is resolved to make sure there were no backdoors left behind or hidden malware. And then they'll produce sort of an after action report explaining what happened and providing some recommendations on what to do about it going forward. And this is kind of a key point. They are available to participate in meetings that you as an MSP might have with your customer and the customer's lawyer and the customer's cyber insurance company, but all of the communication gets driven by the ChannelPro, basically. So all the analysis and remediation is being done by ConnectWise for you behind the scenes, but they're not talking directly to your client or whoever, unless you want them on the call to answer questions and so on. You can buy this two different ways. So starting in about 2 weeks, this isn't true today, but starting in about 2 weeks, you can purchase this service on an ad hoc basis, meaning something happens, you just call them up and say, I need incident response help, and they'll help you out there. You can also, though, put this service on retainer. And so they're selling 20-hour blocks of incident response time at $300 per analyst hour. So if you've got 2 analysts working with you, it's going to be $600 an hour, but $300 per analyst hour for 20-hour blocks. The advantage to prepaying that way is that they will kind of put you through an onboarding process to learn a little bit about you and your customers and environments and so on. And so in the event that there's an incident, you don't have to spend your first few hours of this engagement explaining all that to them. They will have all of that in their records already. And then, the logical question, because obviously ConnectWise is not the first or only company to be doing incident response. So that, the question to ask was, well, why would people want to do that with you? And there's an obvious reason if you're already a ConnectWise partner, but a little bit more broadly than that, they basically said a lot of the other services you can go to for incident response probably work mostly with larger businesses, with corporate IT departments, and all we do basically is incident response for MSPs. So we'll have some experience there, some knowledge about the MSP landscape and business model specifically that some of the others out there might not.
So Ben, let me turn it over to you. When I hear things like $300 an analyst hour, I think, wow, I don't know what the going rate is for incident response, but I know incident response is important. What do you think of this?
I probably would not be the first person to sign on for that service. I think the unfortunate part of going through two incidents with a non-client that had a breach, and then a client that did have a breach. It's a very chaotic, intimate process that you're going through with not only the client, the insurance company, the attorneys. All these people are involved in it. And the reason we've used the company that we've used for an incident response is because I think a lot had to do with they're the people we want to work with. And so when I hear there's 160 analysts or security experts that are going to be working on something, I mean, what does that mean? Is someone assigned to you? Do they take care of every piece of it? Are they really at that level? I mean, we can't hire people half the time to do some of the easiest stuff, and they have that many security people ready, to go. And so are they all at the expertise level that can deal with all these different entities, meaning the insurance companies, the legal side of it? So I would not be real comfortable early on using that type of service, and not because it's ConnectWise. I mean, I'm sure there's other companies trying to do the same thing. Again, the company we work with that does this, we know their team, we know what they're capable of, we know what their end result was. And so I'm not sure I'd have a reason to want to change from them. Now, the $300 per hour, certainly it makes me uncomfortable, anything $300 an hour. But the pricing that not us, that the clients have engaged with, was usually starting as a one-time retainer or project fee. So how that was broken down, I really don't know. But I imagine they're probably around that $300 an hour rate also. So, I hope it works and it can be a benefit to people that haven't established that relationship with an incident response team. But it's probably not the avenue I would want to go down. I would want more of that hand holding. I know the guys that are working with me to go through that process.
Is it pretty normal for an MSP to use an incident response service like this, or do a lot of MSPs try to handle and remediate incidents internally?
I'm not sure I know that answer, but we're very clear that we do not do that. Meaning, our job is to, and again, to be clear, the only time we've been involved is because the client didn't have a security solution in place, and so that's why they were breached. So the one that was our client, they did not want to go down that path. Unfortunately, after they were breached, the next week they signed a 3-year agreement with us. So that's a whole nother different story. But I don't believe most MSPs have that capability or have gone to the level of having an incident response team part of their firm. I mean, I would have to imagine, again, the guys we deal with are very, very focused on what they do. They're not doing MSP stuff. They're not selling MSP products. They're just doing incident breaches, and that's the only thing that they do. So I would have to believe that, and especially, my consortium of companies that I deal with from an MSP side, I don't believe any of them have an incident response team involved in their practice.
Interesting stuff. Well, there's lots more in this article to read, folks. And there's if this is something that you don't have an incident response kind of solution, and you're thinking about one, or you're worried about it, this might be something for you to take a look at. So why don't you go and hit the show notes and check that out. Rich, now I've looked through the notes very closely, and I know that now there's not another news story that's hidden in here somewhere. So we can move on to that one story that I was alluding to, called "Small Teams, Big Results." Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'll give you the origin of this story. It goes back to December of last year. I got an email from Joshua Lieberman, an MSP in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's spoken at our events. He's guest hosted the show numerous times, and he kind of let me know that he was one deal away from his first $1 million year, and he did within the next week get that deal. Last year was his first $1 million year. And, he's got 3 employees. It turns out for part of last year, it was actually 2 employees. And I was thinking, what are the things that enable a smaller team to deliver outsized results? And I can confirm that those are unusually good results for the ChannelPro readership, because we went out and we did or included a question in our reader survey that we do on a regular basis, and asked people what is the average revenue per technician that you have on staff, including you, basically. And 71% of the people who we surveyed said that they are averaging less than $300,000 per technician. So, for a team the size of Josh's, to have $1 million year. For Stanley Lewison, who I quote in the story as well. Stanley was our guest host just a few weeks ago. He a one-man band, right? He runs that company alone, and he is on track to have his 3rd consecutive $1 million plus year. So there are people out there who seem to deliver outsized results with smaller teams, and I was just kind of curious to know what are the things they know that maybe the rest of us should. And that's what this story is about. And, just to kind of run through some of them, they all kind of emphasized that they are very, very big on automation, that they maximize productivity by using every bit of automation functionality in the RMM tool that they can. They all standardize, so they have, fewer products to support, fewer platforms and vendors to train on, and so on. Naturally, they all outsource. We're talking about outsourced incident response or SOC services or something like that. And they all are doing that. And some of them will actually outsource certain functions to other channel pros. Like Michael Klein, one of the MSPs I interviewed, doesn't do cabling, for example, but his customers need that sometimes. He has somebody, a go-to he can work with on that, who is trustworthy. Interestingly, learning to delegate the technical work came up a number of times. So you would think with a small team, the owner is going to be, closing tickets, that this would inevitably be the case. But actually, making time to focus on sales and marketing is one of the things that enables these smaller teams to generate a bigger top line. That came up. And then, just as Josh said, being willing to ask for and accept help. Just knowing that nobody can do everything, nobody knows everything. He's a very enthusiastic member of the ASCII group, for example, and he'll go on the message boards and ask questions of his peers and so on. So, just understanding that there are resources out there who can help you be more effective. And then I guess the one that I would point out is just that a lot of these folks with smaller teams and big results are kind of selective about who they have in their customer base. And so that can mean that they know the kind of customer that they want to serve. And that, again, this gets to that standardization kind of point. But it can also mean that they're a little bit more tough-minded about ditching the customers who are maybe slowing them down, hurting productivity, et cetera. They will stick to the better customers and get rid of the ones who aren't so great.
Living in Maui apparently is also a critical thing too, because one of these people lives in Hawaii. So that must put you in the right mindset when you can look at the beach every day.
Her story is amazing to me. And I've known this, our good friend Carl Palachuk first told me about her probably 2-3 years ago. And this is my first time to actually speak with her. So she runs she's a sole proprietor as well, one person MSP shop that she runs from her home in Maui. The business is in Scottsdale, Arizona. And that's where she used to live. That's where she built the business. That's where all her customers are. I hope I'm getting this detail right, but at one point in time, she moved to the UK and just kept supporting her customers in Scottsdale. And now she lives in Hawaii, and she's still it is possible in this day and age for one person who's very smart and very efficient and has the right sort of, local relationships to support a client base in Scottsdale, Arizona, and presumably the greater Phoenix area from Hawaii. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And I think being smart is also one of those attributes as well. All of the people that are talked about in this particular article, like Mr. Lieberman, are very, very smart and intelligent people. Very, very detail oriented, very fact oriented, and they know their stuff. And I think that's important as well. Ben, what kind of traits do you see as being important if you're going to be successful while being small?
Well, so it's interesting because people sometimes ask, when they ask about ACP Technologies and how it took you to get to where you are. A lot of times, I guess I jokingly or maybe unjokingly say, I wish I was one person with just two techs working out of the basement of my house, 25 years ago, because there certainly is a lot less probably problems, I guess is the best way to say it, when you're running a business. I think what's interesting, you said these people were really smart. I guess I just probably wasn't smart enough at the time to understand that, I could have picked and chose clients that we wanted to work with. We could have partnered with other places to do the things that we weren't good at. And, at some point you realize how much money you want to pay yourself or pay other people. And now it's easy for me to go and say, oh, I would do it this way now. But, the entrepreneurial spirit gets you, and you want to get bigger, and you want to have more people, and you want to have more clients. But maybe a little envious of the people that are doing it the way they are with, I would love to be sitting in Hawaii and taking care of our Buffalo and San Antonio clients, from there. So it's really interesting. And not that I would ever envision starting an MSP ever again, but that's probably the road I would go down. You pick your best clients, you get to the ones that you're doing a great job for them, making a difference in their IT world, and charging them what I would think a higher rate compared to scraping by trying to take everything. So very interesting. Wish I thought of it when I was growing up here, I guess.
I have to imagine that there's cons to that approach, though, too. I mean, if you're really small, there's got to be some upper limit as to how far you can scale.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you say that, because believe it or not, I like to run numbers a lot of times, and so as I ran, I on one of the I can't remember what the numbers were for revenue, or even, you have to decide what you want to make as a person, what your salary is. And so if you do some simple numbers of, if you're billing average people $150 an hour, 30 hours a week, I think, and if I remember that correctly, it's about $250,000 a year. And so are you okay with that revenue number or that comfortability and how you pay yourself, and if you have to pay someone else? If you're a sole proprietor, that's still a good living or a good lifestyle of making that type of money. But it's when you start adding on other employees, you have to add on other clients, and then are you ever really getting away from the business? Do you get to go on vacation? Do you get to stop? Do you get to do something? And that's what I learned over the years of having more people, though. I now have more trusted people where I don't have to do everything. And again, maybe they have their employees that are doing most of the work and the ticket closing and the support and all that other stuff. But I never could get away from that until we got a little bigger.
I know one of the other interesting things too that I think is different today than it may have been 20 years ago is how much of this day-to-day work you can actually outsource to people like vendors and distributors, right, and that kind of stuff. I mean, it seems like you'd almost start a business, do nothing, and just outsource everything. You'll make
right.
less money, but there's almost infinite scale at that point too, even while being small.
Right. And I think, though, that's also the customer experience too. Do they mind that? Do they know the people that, are they talking to someone who's in, I'll say in Buffalo, compared to talking to someone that's in a different part of the world? And we've tried that in the past and we've had pushback. And I think it's because the service level that they were used to, we could never get that from outsourcing it or using another vendor. Now, maybe if you start that way and the expectation is this is what you're going to get, this is where the people are and where they're working, and you know the client understands it, it's a different story. But I would never be able to do that now and outsource it to someone else and have our client expectation be, oh, this is great. You know, it wouldn't work that way.
You said you got to find the customers you want to work with.
Right.
Find customers with low standards.
with big budgets.
with lots of money and low standards. Some of those have to exist out there, I would imagine.
Sure they do. Send them my way.
That's awesome. Well, there's a lot of really good stuff in this article to kind of think about. And you know, some you have to make the decision, big or small. Sometimes just the kinds of customers you have access to kind of dictate some of this. Rich, is there anything in here that anything else that you want to highlight or illustrate or point out that people should get out of it?
No, I mean, I think I hit the really key highlights there, but it was a very interesting story to research and discuss with these folks. You know, and all of them have been in business for a long time. So I wasn't really speaking with people who are small because they're just kind of starting out. It's like, I think that's kind of the sort of business that they want to run, and they've just figured out how to grow that business without growing the staff.
I also noticed too that the one the lady who lives in Maui, her business is based in Scottsdale. Isn't Joshua Liverman's business based in Scottsdale too?
Not far away. He's in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, he's in New Mexico. That's right. I knew he was somewhere in the Southwest. So they're not like competing with each other. Otherwise, I'd say like he needs to move to Maui too, set up right next door, so that way they can, you know, fight it out in person and with the client base, I guess. So good stuff. Yeah, go and check that out. There's a lot of good information in there. We'll put it in the show notes for episode 222. Go and give it a look. We are going to take a break, but when we come back, we've got an awesome interview lined up with Dave MacKinnon. He's the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at N-able. We're going to be talking about security threats, targeting MSPs, really important stuff. I know Ben is going to have a lot to add on this, so why don't we take a break, get him, and we will be right back. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Ben Pearce is still with us here on the other side to talk and be a part of this awesome interview. You know, every MSP should be razor focused on security and doing what it takes to keep your clients safe. But that also means doing whatever it takes to keep you safe. That's right. There's been a huge upswing in the amount of security threats targeting MSPs specifically. And here to talk about some of those is Dave MacKinnon, Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at N-able. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on. Please take a couple more minutes and let us know a little bit more about you and about your role at N-able.
Sure. So I've been with N-able for the last year as CISO. It really came on as we were spinning out, becoming an independent company. I spent my entire career in security. I went to college in upstate New York, and when I graduated from college, I decided I didn't want to see snow for a while. So I moved to Atlanta, and I fell into the security community. So one of the first jobs I had was with SecureWorks and then with ISS. And I've really kind of spent the last 2 decades working in security, and had the opportunity to come to N-able last year, you know, as part of that spinoff, and really join a company that took security seriously. You know, what I've always said is I don't want to be, you know, kind of the just a figurehead behind something that has no weight. And have really been building out the program here, making sure that we're building secure products and doing everything we can to be prepared for if and when a security event happens and impacts us.
Wow, so that's a pretty long stint in the security industry. Tell me, how have you seen like just what it takes to be in IT security? How is it different today than it was 20 years ago when you were getting started?
It's a lot easier. So, you know, when I got out of college, I went and interviewed at SecureWorks, and I didn't know what security was. I had no idea. And I remember when I interviewed there, they were like, "Can you code?" And I was like, "Yes, I can code badly." And like, "Do you know networking?" "I know networking." "Do you know sysadmin?" "I know sysadmin." Like, and I went in and I worked nights. I was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I worked overnights, and I read books, and I played with Snort, and I basically got a hands-on experience with all these different tools. Like there were no university programs, or back then it was like everybody had their MCSE, like that was the thing to have, but it wasn't really as security focused as understanding all the different components. Now, when you start to look at like the universities have very specific programs. There's lots of resources out there for public information, how young individuals are getting into security and learning about it. I think it's awesome. It's a great opportunity, especially with the skill shortage we have. Like the sooner folks can get exposed to this, the better.
So Ben, I want to actually ask that question to you too, because you've been in the IT industry a long time. You've seen security change and the approach to security change, and even the threats to security change. What would you say the difference is between then and now?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I agree with Dave saying it's getting easier, but that's certainly in our world. It certainly is now knowing the rules, and I guess the rules of engagement of what we need to do to protect our clients, right? And so I think what's really happening from the past is there's certain criterias that are directing or dictating what we have to do as an organization to secure our clients. So compliancy such as NIST or CMMC or anything else that's out there that helps guide us instead of us a few years ago kind of making up what we should be doing. And so we like that factor. So maybe that is more of the easier part because we're being told or being guided of what has to be secured and what we have to do as an organization to help our clients. I think, I still sometimes use the word, it's the wild, wild west, because there's still so many different tools and avenues of trying to create that security for the clients. And that is filtering itself out. I think as things consolidate, we have a better chance of making the right decisions instead of every year, or maybe, every few years coming back to the client saying, okay, now we got to change this. Now we got to do something different. So I think from our footprint of what we're doing and how we're helping our clients, that's kind of the pathway we're going down. And we're also, I'm always told to stop saying this, we're serving the dog food that we eat, right? We're trying to be as secure internally, following those rules, going down the pathway of being NIST compliant and putting those pieces in place.
It's really interesting you say that, Ben, because the main reason we brought Dave onto the show was to talk about some research that N-able recently published. And we all know, we know how incredibly dangerous the security landscape is right now, and how often end users are being hit by ransomware and other things. And we all know vaguely, generally, that MSPs are under attack too, because they're a route to all sorts of other businesses. But what was really interesting about your study at N-able, Dave, is that it really kind of quantified that those attacks going up against MSPs, and some of these numbers were really kind of shocking. I mean, of the MSPs you studied, 90% of them, if I remember right, almost all of them have been hit by a successful cyber attack in the last 18 months. Do you have any sense for how that might compare to a conversation we'd be having about this a year ago? Is the rate, the attack rate still increasing?
So part of me, I really think people are paying more attention now. The attacks have been constant for years. Like the ecosystem is what it is. It's a moneymaker, and that's the intent behind it is to walk away for the most part, unless you get into nation state. So, but what you really have now in the industry is an awareness around security is important. Like when you turn on the news, all you hear about is this bad thing happened to this company, and these organizations are aware. And how could this impact me? What am I doing? So a lot of it, I think, is just awareness, which is good. But I do believe the attack volumes have been high for years and years. Like this isn't new. What really has changed is accessibility to the tooling that was really nation state focused, 5-10 years ago. Now it's commodity. If you have enough money and you're making a lot of money off ransomware, you can buy any tool you want. It's an open market. That has definitely changed the threat landscape. But I would really default back to it's just awareness. And I would argue probably 100% of those folks have had a security event in the last 18 months. 10% just don't know.
So, and that's an alarming thought right there. But 90% last 18 months, those are victims of successful attacks. It's not just being attacked. It's like, being successfully attacked. This kind of goes to what Ben was talking about maybe a little bit. I mean, why do you think that success rate on attacks against MSPs was that high?
I think it varies. It also depends upon maturity. In our business, we have MSPs that are, anywhere from 3 to 5 folks to 100 plus. And it's how much time and investment can you put in, as Ben mentioned, eating your own dog food, securing yourself. Well, if you only have a half a person that's focused on security or is trained in security and knows what to do, it's very difficult for you to protect yourselves as well as your customers. It's a two-way street, and unless you're making that type of investment to force that for yourselves and for your customers, you leave yourself vulnerable, and you don't understand all the risks that exist inside your organization.
And if I could jump in, it's a tough thing to do, right? Because all of a sudden, you look back a few years ago where we probably were lax on security measures, and all of a sudden we have to ramp up and put all these things in places. And again, now we're taking technical people that are used to having admin rights to everything and, could get to all these different places, and we're locking them down. And, we're trying to then make them aware, because they're the messengers to our clients to say, this is the reason we have to do this. We have to protect ourselves, because the reality is we have kind of the keys to the castle for all our clients. And so we can't put ourselves in that position. And with that said, our partners who were using their tools can't put themselves in that position to gain access to our client information. And so it's tough, or it's been tough, and it continues to be tough, right? It's always being, as I say, we're always the bearer of bad news to our employees, and then we're the bearer of bad news to our clients, because we're trying to sell them a new solution to protect them. And I think the good part, though, is there's a lot of other people giving that message. The insurance companies, their vendors, their clients, that are saying to our clients, hey, we're not doing business with you unless you do that. And so the message is starting to become a little easier, but for us as an organization, we just have to keep buckling down and putting those secure pieces in place. Even if we feel a little pain, we're training ourselves to then make our clients better.
So Dave, one comment that I think that Ben touched on that I think is important, that I want to get your take on, is one of the reasons why the success rate of hackers going after MSPs higher is because they do hold the keys to the castle. Are those attacks, you think, more targeted? Are they rather than like a broad phishing campaign where they're just sending out emails with phishing links and they're getting whoever takes the bait? Are they like identifying MSPs specifically and doing things to target them specifically?
I'm sure there are certain actor groups who are doing that. I mean, it's a mishmash. And attribution, when you get down to who's actually attacking you, is nowadays it's very difficult. But it's damn near impossible, just because tactically they're so similar. So it's hard to tie back exactly, is this MSP being targeted because they have specific clients? Are they working in the government space where they're supporting maybe a state or a portion of a state, or they some sort of critical infrastructure? That information typically is public. You can look up who bid to support an IT system for any local government organization, and if you do your homework, you can draw the map. Okay, well, now I know my target because that's the pathway to my objective. But walking those pieces back is very difficult from an actor perspective. It's just not an easy science, and or a very clean science for that matter.
Ben was talking about how all of the security stories in the news are increasing awareness among SMBs. And one of the things you found in your study is that SMBs are raising their security budgets, and it was by an average of 7%. MSPs are raising their security budgets as well, but by an average of 5%. So, I mean, in the case of either of those numbers, does that feel like it's enough? I mean, are companies spending what they need to spend, particularly MSPs? Are they spending what they need to spend to secure themselves? And are they ramping up that spending as rapidly as they need to, given that 90% of them got successfully hacked in the last year and a half?
Yeah, so I think it depends upon what your starting point is. If you're going at 5% of zero, you're not really moving the bar. If you've been making a serious investment over time, then yes, I mean, you know, my team growth size is probably somewhere in that range year over year in terms of continuing to add solutions and whatnot. The challenge is what most people don't account for is you can't just buy, you know, a silver bullet. I mean, I wish we could, because then I'd be doing this video from a beach somewhere with a Corona in my hand, just waving, going, "This is great." You can't buy your way out of this alone. You have to come up with a solution that has a layered focus to really ensure that you're. And I very much have the mindset from a security when the event happens. You know, that's how we operate here. But I make the assumption that somebody will be successful at some point. How we handle that and how we can respond to it is the most important piece. So from a budgeting perspective, it really does come down to how has your business thought about it? You know, for how MSPs, how have you educated your customers, and what's their risk tolerance for a cyber event? You know, can you afford for your business to be offline for a month? If the answer is yes, okay, then, you know, maybe you I don't know how you can pull it off, but okay, that's your risk tolerance. Versus if you say no, like I can be down for a couple hours, well, that very much changes the dynamic. And when you really get into that, the business continuity and the disaster recovery planning, and that should drive your budget. Like I don't think artificially saying, yeah, we're going to add 5% for this year because we're meeting a metric, that doesn't help you. You're tackling a problem and you need to quantify how you're going to solution that.
It probably doesn't help either that you can't just buy security anyway. I mean, you can buy tools and you can buy solutions that will aid in that. But, you know, I don't want to sound like a broken record because I've talked about this on the show a lot. Human beings are fallible, and it doesn't matter how many security measures you put in place. If somebody opens the door and does something dumb, all of those fall apart.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you see that with RDP all the time. Like, you know, we've had customers who've had security events, and I've jumped on the phone with them just to understand what happened. And, you know, as we sat down and one specific example, you know, they said, well, EDR didn't work. I said, okay, well, how did it not work? And they said, well, there was ransomware on I think it was a mail server. Don't hold me to that. But, and as we dug into it, I said, well, give me the mail server. Like, where is it? And I pulled it up and showed in, and I was like, hey, is the name of your server X? And he's like, how do you know that? I said, because 3389 is sitting open to the internet. Right. And I said, well, what's your account lockout policy? And he's like, I don't think we have one. So basically they left RDP open to the world, and, you know, they beat the hell out of that server, and they finally got in. And I said, well, once you're admin, you know, once you're God on the server, no security tool will ever fix it. I 100% agree. And I think cloud changes that purview a lot too, because cloud is very easy to miss a configuration step or make it, you add a very easy step, you know, whether it be RDP or whatever you want to open. And, you know, it's great. I can connect to it from my house. I can connect to it from the office, but so can everybody else. And if you don't have visibility into that, your risk profile just opens up a ton.
You know, there was something in the research, but before I forget to get to this, I want to make sure to work it in, because we keep talking about attacks and successful attacks and how many people were successfully attacked. But you guys asked people what kind of attack they suffered. And number one on the list, maybe not a big surprise, was like phishing or business email compromise attacks. Ransomware came in number 3, which might be a little bit surprising. But what did surprise me was the number 2 one on the list, which was distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks, which I know these still happen, but I had thought of that as a much lesser kind of category. So are MSPs being targeted by that kind of attack more often than other businesses? And why do you think maybe attackers are doing that?
So I don't know that they're being targeted more than other businesses. I do think there's 2 sides to that DDoS attack. So part of it is you're the recipient of it. Part of it is you're the originator of it. So there's lots of, and not new, but there's lots of exploits which will go in and drop a DDoS bot on a machine, and they just use you as a replicator to impact something. It's still a security incident. But so that we definitely have seen. I'm surprised people don't talk more about crypto mining, because I feel like that's what I've been looking at for years. They pop a server in AWS and drop a miner on it, and they just mine on your hardware. But no, I think DDoS will continue to diminish over time, even in our world, because we're cloud everything. Like, everything sits up in cloud hosted data centers. They take the brunt of the volume, that they absorb it well with auto scaling and everything else in cloud services. But again, there's the other half of that equation, which is, are you the source of it, which is a bigger problem, because then there's brand reputation and everything else that you have to deal with.
So you dedicate a fair amount of time in this report to best practices that could help mitigate some of these risks. One of which, not surprisingly, is multi-factor or two-factor authentication. But you found that almost every MSP you surveyed offers MFA to their customers, and only about 40% of them use it themselves, which was incredible to me. So, I mean, just thoughts on that statistic, and what you would say about it to folks in the audience.
I think it's scary as hell. It's such an easy thing. Like, I have my phone right here, and I have MFA for everything. We are beyond the day of user convenience. Is key, and in complete transparency, MFA is not that big of an inconvenience anymore. Like, we use Authenticator; it just pops up, and I punch in the 2-digit code and hit OK, and we move on. It's a very easy containment step to help protect identities, and really, if you think about it from an adversarial perspective, identity is the target now. I want to make sure that I can get your account, and then I can use, whether you use it for BEC, whether you use it to impact an MSP, however you want to do it. Multi-factor is absolutely critical. And for anybody who's going, like, we're going through an insurance renewal right now, and of the 12 things we have to have, like, that's at the top. And if you don't have it, you're not going to get a policy. Right. So I think everybody, to me, it's a barrier to entry. If you want to do security, you should have MFA enabled. And think about it like your bank. Do you have MFA enabled on your bank account? And if you don't, are you comfortable with somebody being able to break in and steal all your money? Right. And if the answer is yes, if you could just give me your email address, I just want to test it. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding, especially if there's anybody in law enforcement listening. But
and it's interesting, because we have to have now made the stance that any client that comes on board, if they're a new client with us, and as we continue to educate our current clients, they have to have it. We can't take a client that says, no, we don't want it. It's an extra step. It's an inconvenience. We've had to take the position of, well, then you do not meet our security requirements, and quite honestly, you're going to fail sooner or later anyways. So we won't take you.
Well, it's such an effective step too. I think that's
right.
one of the things. It's like, yeah, okay, it'll inconvenience you for 3 seconds when you go to log into something, but that is so effective in stopping hackers from getting access to accounts via credentials, right? It's so important.
Well, and there's also conditional access. So if you have a good conditional access policy where you enable MFA where you need it, and you have trusted zones where even there you minimize the impact to a business in their day-to-day. It's not a new science. It's been around forever. We just don't have the little tokens on our wallet, on our keychains anymore like we used to.
Right, but I think when Dave was saying on the insurance side, and I know I read this article recently, the top 5 IT security insurance carriers, that involves Travelers and AIG and some of these other ones, they won't even write a policy anymore. So you have to have it.
Yeah. If you want insurance, you have. I mean, again, I think we got a list of 12 things and show incremental improvement year over year. So that was the other thing they're asking us is, here's where you were last year. What have you done in the last 12 months? I mean, and how have you made your program better to ensure that ultimately they don't want to pay out, or they don't want to pay anything out, which I get. And they've really woken up to that. Which is why all the rates have roughly doubled or more. I've heard some have gone 4 and 5x what they were last year, which is they're astronomical numbers for coverage.
You know, it's interesting as I'm thinking about this. If only 40% of MSPs are using multi-factor authentication, and the cyber insurers pretty much universally require it, that means there are a lot of MSPs without cyber insurance right now. And you know, that's not the policy that's going to protect them if the customer gets hacked. But obviously, a lot of them are getting hacked. It might be another case where they're saying one thing to the customer and not doing it themselves.
I think being educated is important. You know, like we do questionnaires for all the vendors we do business with because we want to understand what they're doing, how they're doing. You know, if they're handling our data in any way like that, that's a risk to our business. So we want to make sure we're not just, you know, throwing it over along on, yeah, they seem like good guys when we shook their hands. But I think asking those right questions about, you know, whether it's or even the vendor space, like people ask us those questions all the time. I'm glad they did. They should. We should be talking about what we do. It's not, to me, it's not an iron curtain. Transparency is what gains trust. So those customers of MSPs, to your point, they should be asking that question. If I'm compromised, how can you help? And how do you test that plan? Like, who are you going to call? You know, I get full out tabletops are difficult to do. They take a lot of time, but from a business perspective, they're extremely healthy. Like we literally just did one. I'm in Raleigh today. We did one yesterday. We had the whole leadership team down here, and it was the prime time for us to walk through a cyber exercise just to make sure that we're testing ourselves. And I think customers of MSP should ask that question. You know, what the same risks exist for you. If I have this problem, you know, how often are you, you know, backing up my machine? Is it once every, you know, 48 hours, or is it, you know, is it once a week? Are you testing recovery? Do we have a plan for what needs to come back online first? So it really is coming up with that plan of, one, understanding the attack, but two, understanding the recovery, because I know a lot of the questions that I get are, you know, how quickly can you restore all our boxes? And I'm like, well, you're asking the wrong question. Which box do you need first? Like that is having that plan in place and understanding how quickly you can do each of those is far more important than saying, I will be 100% online in the next 4 hours. That's an impossible task, but the business can be functioning in the next 4, 8, 12, whatever your risk tolerance is. Those are conversations I think all customers should be having, especially when they're working with MSPs, because the insurance piece is big. It will continue to be big. And if you lie on those applications, they will deny your claims because I'm going to knock on some wood. I haven't gone through a claim, but I am sure they do their due diligence to understand the root cause. And if you said, yep, I use multi-factor everywhere, and they're like, you got popped because you weren't using multi-factor, that claim is out the window and you're out a big sum of money, because IR retainer hours, legal retainer hours, that they are the most expensive on the books that you can buy right now.
So you mentioned backup and that sort of benchmark, or, you know, how often are you backing up, 48 hours or less, or once a week? Or there was another pretty interesting statistic in that report. Only 40% of the MSPs you surveyed are backing up their workstations every 48 hours or less. So it is 48 hours. You know, is that like a maximum? Is that a recommended guideline? Should everybody be backing up at least every 48 hours?
To me, I would do it every 24. I mean, you know, doing a backup, you can do a full and then you do your incrementals so you can recover in an effective manner. Some of that is business tolerance. You know, how much data can you afford to lose? Is it something where your business is rolling data every few hours, and you say, well, I can't afford to lose. I can't afford to lose what happened today, because if I do, I think. I always think about it like you roll back the time machine. Well, how far back can you roll it to where your business will be successful? So some of that is a business tolerance, but it's a healthy conversation for any customer working with an MSP to have that conversation. You need to come in educated and really the MSP guides, but also should be hearing what your business needs are to make you successful and resilient in the event that something happens.
And our standards for being an MSP is we back up workstations 3 times a day, and we're retaining that for a year. So that is our standard backup policy.
If only there were more like you.
Yeah, definitely.
So another best practice that you talked about in the report was automation. And we talk about automation a lot, at ChannelPro and in managed services generally as a key to productivity, but it doesn't come up nearly as often as a key to security for a managed service provider. So what is the role of automation inside the managed service practice in keeping security standards high?
Yeah, so I got advice a very long time ago that if you hate doing something in your job, automate it out of your life. And I don't think that just applies to IT. IT has been really good at it for a long time. Sysadmins are very creative, but security has the same opportunity to make sure that you're doing the right things in an automated manner, so that new box comes online, you're doing all the tasks you need to do, whether it be you're backing it up, you're rolling out the correct policies, whatever the case may be. That to me, we can't burn people hours to do that. People are so hard to find right now. Ben, I'm sure you have the same problem we do.
Yep.
Finding great people is hard, and retaining them. And especially now, the workplace opened up. We have more people in more locations, which is awesome, but it's equally as competitive of a market. So the success for any organization will be to figure out how do you leverage those automated tools to reduce your headcount needs, so those people can focus on advancing the program, advancing your customers' programs, advancing the MSP itself, and again, automate it out of your life. Like it's such a simple thing to say, but most people are slow to adopt it because it's complex and scary, and it doesn't have to be.
So Dave, talk a little bit about some of the things that that you, if you had to highlight, 2 or 3 things other than MFA, which, oh my gosh, any MSP that's not using MFA really needs to get their head examined. But other than that, what are some easy steps or some crucial steps that MSPs need to take to make them more resilient against cyber attacks?
Yeah, so one is, and I'm going to take, like you talk about, because ransomware is probably the one everybody talks about most. Ransomware comes in 3 ways. Like, very simply, you get it through a phishing email. You're going to get it through some sort of a lack of a patch. So if you have an on-prem exchange which you're not properly patching or something like that, or you have remote access enabled and you don't know it. Like, those are the 3 ways that they're going to get in. So you have RDP in, so they can bounce in the network. So if you take that being the largest risk to any organization, I would argue right now, one is making sure that you are actually doing correct securing of your email system. So do you have something that's doing email scanning, filtering, blocking that malware? I would also add, if you pivot a little bit into BEC style attacks, where they're doing business email compromise, where they're trying to get you to potentially change payroll or change how you're routing a PO, leverage a system that can add external tags to your email headers. So that way they can impersonate like an executive or somebody else. So that, hey, okay, John Pagliuca, who's our CEO, John's not going to email me from his Gmail account. I should never see that external tag on his email, but leveraging those simple things, those simple indicators for your employees to know where they can be conditioned to see it. So email is, I think, a given. It's been a threat for years. It'll continue to be a threat and an avenue in protecting that. Patching is patching. I think in the MSP space, that's where we grew up. And I think having a good process in place to ensure that your MSP is delivering the service that you expect and patching all those critical vulnerabilities in a timely manner is absolutely important. And having an MSP who can come in and attest to that. It's again, I don't know, I'm old school Irish, so I take a lot of value in a handshake. When we shake hands, I trust people are going to do what they say, but you still need to verify it. So make sure that you're having those conversations with the MSP to see those things. And then for the external facing, some of that, I do think the MSP has a prime opportunity. They know your infrastructure, they know what's set up, and review that with you. Ask those questions. Do I have, in the case of the case I worked last year, like is remote desktop open to the world? What does our external presence look like? If you want to get into the weeds, how could they pivot? So if somebody were to compromise that box, how could they move internally? Do you actually have a DMZ? Does it just physically sit in your network environment where they could hit everything? But really, those would be the big 3 pieces of advice I give folks. And just an add-on to that would be have a plan. As simple as it may be, assume you're going to have a cyber event. And again, that's how I operate, but having that plan in place too, and know what you're going to do, who you're going to call. The MSP is going to get the first call. They should know this.
Right.
Do they have a plan? What would they do? How are they going to deploy people? Having those conversations and going through those exercises is super helpful. We've done it all of our lives. Like, you know, being in the US, growing up in an education system, I guarantee you all of us knew exactly what to do when the fire alarm went off when we were in school. You knew where to get up, you knew where to walk, you know where to meet, and you know what you're going to, you know, how you check off to the teacher, and the teacher knows how to go clear that. Having those internal checklists, as simple as they may be, are very healthy, because when you're going through a cyber incident, you forget everything. And we're all guilty of it. Like, I can sit down and say, I've been through thousands of cyber investigations, and every time it happens, your mind goes a million miles an hour and you forget common sense half the time. So having those pieces written down that you can refer back to them, and then testing them and evolving them, like, don't just shelf them, will make any business resilient for when an event does happen, because it's going to happen. I mean, if these actors would not be in business if they weren't making money hand over fist, which they are right now.
So, quick show of hands. Anytime somebody says who you're going to call, is the first word that pops in your head Ghostbusters? Just
oh yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make sure that word popped into everybody's head when he said who you're going to call. I'm like, oh, you're the Ghostbusters. You know, and it's funny, Dave, that you said that too, because like the school fire drill, it you know, those always go well until there's an actual fire, and then it's chaos and pandemonium. Yep. And we see it all the time. So it's really, really critical, I think, to not only have a plan, but to execute and drill that plan on a regular basis, because you don't want to get to the situation where you think you know what you're going to do, but then you react completely differently. Ben, anything else that you want to add to that, as far as like some good tactical advice for MSPs to start solidifying their security posture?
Yeah, well, it was great to hear what Dave thinks are what we should have in place, or where we think the attacks are going to be, because as we build as an MSP or an MSSP, what we do is we build stacks of security solutions, right? Not everyone fits into one solution. And so the items, when you talk about, you know, the email part of it, we break things down by devices, and we break things down by users. So email being the one application or the tool, you know, we're all using, we have an emphasis on, of course, as we said, everyone has to have MFA, and I'll try and be vendor agnostic of what I talk about, what tools we use. But then we have an anti-spoofing solution, you know, with a DMARC portion of that, DMARC enforcement that we make every client go on to. The advanced email security, you know, probably more of a glorified anti-spam solution, but we make every client take those pieces. And then on the device side, when we're doing DNS protection for the device and on the network, and then using, you know, quite honestly, we're using Sentinel as another higher end piece of you know, checking the device. Those are our minimums, you know, so we want every client to be on that. And again, of course, you know, being an MSP, we're running all those pieces. And so, you know, it gives people a chance if they're doing those things, especially on the email side. And again, if they're not, something bad's going to happen.
Absolutely. Dave, I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things that N-able offers to help MSPs with this kind of stuff, because not everybody who listens or watches may be familiar with N-able. So tell us a little bit about what you offer at N-able to help MSPs with this.
Sure. So we have a whole suite of solutions. So, you know, whether it be remote app management with automation and being able to push, you know, those patches out to ensure that your devices are in compliance, that you're getting, you know, whether it be EDR or whatever tools that you want to leverage across the board, and monitoring the health of those things, which is absolutely critical. We have backup solutions. So, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, kind of that preparedness, but backing up to cloud, direct to cloud, like especially, and I think it's even more critical right now when you're talking about COVID, like sending it over the VPN to the office, like that doesn't make sense anymore. Like my office is a room in my house that I've converted to a full-time domain. So And really, so having those backup solutions and having the ability to test them too. So we do give the ability to test and confirm that, like, hey, we're not just saying we're backing it up, but you can confirm that it's being backed up and validate that. We have a whole email suite, which does, protection of email threats that are impacting your business. We have remote administration tools. So what's called take control. So if you need to actually assist the user directly, if they're having a problem while they're remote, you can jump right online and work on their workstation with them to support them. I'm probably forgetting a few. I'm more of a security guy, not a product guy, but we've got a whole suite of things to help businesses be successful and the MSPs make them successful.
Well, if I were an MSP, I think calling you over the Ghostbusters would probably make more sense on this. So, Dave, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about this. Great conversation. I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. And that's awesome. So if anybody did want to learn more about you and connect with you, learn more about N-able, where can they go? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Yep. If you go to n-able.com, you can view all about us, and obviously there's a link there where you can reach out for more information, and we'll be happy to connect with you. Awesome. Well, Dave MacKinnon, Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer of N-able, thank you so much for being on. There's more ahead, though. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Ben Pearce will be with us on the other side. We're going to break down the show and have a little bit of fun, and Rich will try to predict the future, which is often to hilarious effect. So we will just have to see how that goes. Stick around. We will be right back. And we are back with part 3 now of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly, episode 222. I get to say that a lot because that's fun, and I won't get to say 3 numbers. They're the same numbers in a row in quite a while. We are still joined with Ben Pearce. He's still with us from the interview. First, I want to take a second to say, wow, what a great interview that was with Dave. A lot of really good stuff that we talked about. Rich, anything you want to point out, any highlights from that interview that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, that I'm still reeling from some of the statistics in that research. And by the way, Colleen Fry, who folks heard about before, wrote an article about that research study that very recently ran on our website, and we will link to that from the show notes if you kind of want to dive into some of those statistics a little bit. But the idea that only 40% of MSPs out there have MFA enabled is surprising.
Staggering. Ben, any takeaways or anything that struck you from that interview you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, that stat alone is scary. I mean, again, our job is to protect our clients, and if you're not even protecting yourself, there would be some deep concerns in that. And again, as mentioned, in that segment, if we're not protecting our information, we all know we have client information and most likely usernames and passwords and IPs and all that other stuff. And if I was a client of those MSPs, I would probably be looking for another MSP.
Absolutely. There's that cliched term, eat your own dog food, but that is so important as an MSP. Like, you cannot do stuff for your clients that you don't do for you, because you have no practice with it. You have how do you know it works if you don't do it for yourself?
Right. And that's a great point, because it took us, we probably knew 4 years ago that we needed to refine our security offering, whatever that was 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago sounds like it's not so long ago, but yet so long ago. And it took us a good 1.5 years, 2 years to refine what we were doing internally. And we're still changing that. But we weren't going to go out and say, okay, we can do all this stuff for you and not have it implemented internally where we didn't even know how to use it or, support it or resolve it. And so that's the road we took, on just about everything we do, but most importantly on the security side of it.
For sure. Well, and let's talk about that a little bit too, because you've kind of taken the journey to implement implement an MSSP business as part of your business, which is a very involved thing and not easy to do. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what you've been doing to achieve whatever level of security proficiency that is.
Yeah. Again, it started, 4 years ago, and I can bluntly say did not move as fast as I thought it should, because for me, it's like all right, get the pieces in place. Let's start billing people and let's, put more money in our bank account here. And it didn't work out that way. And it's probably for a great reason, because we had the people smarter on our side. One, not that it's about me, but reeling me in and saying, we have to put all these pieces in the right way. And so as we went through the journey of evaluating product, evaluating partners, evaluating vendors, evaluating how we're going to propose it and send it out, it took much longer than we thought. So it wasn't okay, go buy EDR and go buy your backup solution and go, and we've got the vendors, because of course they all want to sell it to us. And so it took some time to refine that. And it's taking time, because it's now not as fast of an implementation to say, okay, here's our security stacks. It's easy, it's easy to sell it. It's not that difficult now because of the threats. And as we said in the other segment, the bad things help us sell it to the clients who need to be using it. And so we can sell it. It's still tough to implement it effectively and quickly. And so where we thought the solution rollout would be much quicker, it hasn't been. And so now we do have some clients that we have staffed that we if I could get more people, we could roll it out faster. But as we all know, it's harder to get, it's hard to get those quality people to roll it out. So they have to sit in the background as we continue to roll it out. And as we roll out the security stacks, things change, right? Tools change, the environments change. And so sometimes now we're going back to the early adapters of the MSP products, and we have to go back and change what we've done for them. But in no way am I complaining that it's a bad process. It just is taking much longer than anticipated. And I still expect it's going to continue to change on the tool set side going forward. But the great news, and I don't know if my desk is made of wood, but we haven't had a breach of the clients that we've rolled out the tools that we're rolling out. Now, I'm not that naive to think something bad may not happen in the future, but it's working. That's what we know that it's working from the bad stuff that we see that happens of people that don't do it.
It's got to be a lot to think about and define too, because you have to decide how far down the security rabbit hole you want to go internally, because it can get really expensive really quickly. Like, so I assume you didn't build your own security operations center.
We have not. And so we have a third party, vendor that if a client gets to that level, that's who we'll utilize. Now we have a few, we have clients that they're compliancy because they're doing business with the government. It's a simple example I can use, or to the DoD, where they need that level. And so that's where our third party, vendor will come in and assist us on what we can't provide internally.
So for anybody out there who is thinking about diving deeper into the security space, what would be one really good piece of advice that you didn't know at the time that you know now that you could share?
It's really, to us, or to me, it would be vetting the products you want to use or the tool sets, because there's a lot of them out there and a lot of them do great jobs. But you then need the people internally to support them. And so, just to give you, an example of, are you using Sentinel or CrowdStrike or all the other products that are out there? Well, what's really the best for your client, and eventually what's best for you to support? And that's the piece I think that's critical compared to, well, we're going to roll out Sentinel, we're going to roll out CrowdStrike, we're going to roll out Webroot, and we're going to roll all these different things out because that's the flavor of the day. You have to have your one favorite flavor of the day, and you have to support it and know how to price it, and and eventually, if something does occur, you need to know how to take those tools and those logs and those tools you're using and make it effective information that someone then can utilize. And again, I just thought that process was going to be quicker on our end, and maybe we could have made it quicker, but that's what pushed us back. So my advice is get the tool sets and the pieces you want, or the pieces you want in your tool set, and don't rush it. Don't go and, I know vendors always tell us they're using, have the best stuff. Don't drink the Kool-Aid just because a vendor's telling you that. Go and vet out what's best for you as an organization and that's best for your clients. Unless
it's Hawaiian Blue Punch, then you absolutely want to drink the Kool-Aid because that is delicious.
CVS had it on sale yesterday.
So, that's it's a brilliant advice. And thanks for sharing that. And it was a really, really good interview. And a big thanks again to Dave MacKinnon from N-able for joining us for that. And also a great segue talking about Kool-Aid and other things like flavors of the day. So we can transition over to our 5 questions segment. So for those who may be new to the show, well, glad you're here. But also Ben this is his first time on. So Ben, 5 questions is a little game we play with our guest hosts, where Rich and I will go back and forth and at the end ask you 5 questions completely off the top of our head. We cannot write them in advance. We cannot script them. I guarantee you they will be off topic. I guarantee they might be interesting, but no gotchas, nothing to embarrass you. It's just to learn a little bit more about you and have a little bit of fun. Are you ready?
Great. Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Rich, question number 1 to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So up until recently, in pre-COVID times, I would be out in Buffalo, once a year typically to attend an Ingram Micro event. They've got a big office out there, as you know. And I've discovered that Buffalo has become this kind of hip place, like interesting bars and restaurants, and in particular, microbreweries. I've been to a number of them there. Do you have a favorite Buffalo microbrew?
I have a few, unfortunately. So Resurgence is one of them. And they were located on Niagara Street. Now they're in the Cobblestone district. So Resurgence, they have it's called a Sitmo, is one of their beers. And then another one where I lived in East Aurora is 42 North. They're another brewery. And now that you put me on the spot, I cannot think of the name of the beer that I could drink all day long and, not walk home. So Resurgence and 42 North are my favorites.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. All right. Question number 2 to me. So you mentioned flavor of the day. So let me create a scenario for you. You walk into an ice cream shop and they have a big sign that says flavor of the day that has a combination of ice cream and some toppings. What would be your favorite flavor of the day?
My favorite flavor of the day would be a butter pecan, and I'm not sure I'd put toppings on that, but if I did, it would be rainbow sprinkles.
Rainbow sprinkles on butter pecan.
Yep.
Doesn't get any more unique than that. I can say that for sure. Rich, question number 3 to you.
So Matt's going to have his own answer to this question. So this will be easy for you guys, but for somebody like me who lives in Seattle, where it snows once a winter and nobody knows how to drive in it, but what is the key to driving safely in the snow?
That would be having a 4-wheel drive vehicle with good tires. So I think most cars now here in Buffalo are, we used to call them 4-wheel drive, but are all-wheel drive. I mean, it's pretty rare, I think, to buy a pickup truck or an SUV that doesn't have all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. And what's kind of interesting, when you go to the South, you see those same vehicles that are 2-wheel drive. And I can't comprehend why you would have a pickup truck that's 2-wheel drive. So I think it's just, that's the reality of it. You need the vehicle that can actually go through the snow. And most of the times after your 30,000 miles, you're putting a more aggressive tire on your car to drive through the snow. So, and I guess really what I probably should say is patience, but I'm not sure Buffalo people driving in the snow are patient because they just think they know how to drive better in the snow. So
that was what I was going to add is like, not, I mean, good tires in the right car makes a big difference, but also just slowing down and knowing what corners you can take at what speed when it's snowing is super important.
I mean, you got to remember when we were learning to drive, we learned to drive in the snow the first time we ever drive. So the first year we're going to experience it. So.
Absolutely. All right. I guess that's question number 3 to me, or no, question number 4 to me. Sorry. We're on question number 4. Oh boy, Rich, I don't have a question number 4 in mind yet. Let me think of one. Rich, I'm going to give you question number 4 and then I'll take number 5.
Okay, that works. So we just talked about snow and winter and cold weather. When you leave Buffalo to go someplace warm, what is your favorite warm destination?
Well, it's interesting. We are talking so much about Scottsdale. It's Scottsdale, Arizona, and we're going May 9th. I will be headed there. And then out of the country, we go to Aruba. Unfortunately, haven't been there in 2 years. So we were supposed to go there. I tell the story so much. January 6th, we were going with 10 of us. And 2 of them tested positive before we even got to the airport because we had to test 24 hours beforehand. So we never made it this year. But Scottsdale is our utmost favorite place in the United States, and then Aruba outside.
Very cool. Very cool. Good plug for the fine city of Scottsdale, Arizona. Yeah. All right. I do have a question number 5. Finally thought of one. So you are in a unique position where you live that not only do you have relatively close access to Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and various coffee shops, but also to Tim Hortons. What is the superior coffee shop?
So Tim Hortons is the superior coffee shop because there's so many of them. It's kind of interesting. Dunkin' Donuts in Western New York, I can think of maybe 4 or 5 of them throughout the entire area. And then Starbucks is also a lot of places, which I don't enjoy Starbucks. So I rotate between Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donuts almost every other day.
And if you could say which one has the best coffee between the 2, you got to pick. Which one would you pick? I
would pick Dunkin'. I mean, I like Dunkin' better than Tim Hortons. I mean, I know we always say Starbucks is just too. I don't like the Starbucks, but Dunkin' I would take every day.
Awesome. We got a Dunkin' fan on the show. Always good to meet a fellow Dunkin' fan. I also prefer Dunkin' Donuts over the Starbucks when I can. But in the area where I live, and I'm sure in Rich's area too, it's like there's a Starbucks within a Starbucks that's inside of another Starbucks. Yeah. Where Dunkin's a little harder to find, and that is the way it is here too. There's Dunkin' Donuts around, but Starbucks is a little bit more prevalent. Rich, how many Starbucks is there in Seattle? Is there like 7,000 of them?
It's got to be something like that. I mean, this is, I'm sitting like 3 blocks from the very first Starbucks, right? And this is global headquarters, ground zero, and they are everywhere here.
I always laugh when I go downtown to Chicago and I see like a Starbucks in the corner, and then I look across the street on the other corner and there's another Starbucks, and it's like, that it cannot be an efficient way to run a business. I don't know.
Toronto's like that with Tim Hortons, though. You get into Toronto and you go in the underground subway area, and there's a Tim Hortons stop every. You can see them. You can see them from each location. So pretty similar.
Very, very funny. Well, good stuff. Thank you so much for playing 5 questions with us. Always good to learn a little bit more about our guests. But before you go, Rich, why don't you tell us what we might have missed in the week past and what might be coming up next week?
Well, a great place to catch up on some of the things you might have missed in the week that was is our weekly In Case You Missed It post, written by ChannelPro's James Gaskin. It shows up on ChannelProNetwork.com every Friday. This week, James is going to be writing about some new mobile processors from AMD, a new whiteboard feature that popped up in Zoom this week. I actually saw it in Zoom before I got the press release announcing it, but you may have noticed that. A new patching tool for a Microsoft Endpoint Manager from Ivanti And then a story that's a little bit hard to explain, but basically there was one of those sort of illuminated road signs by the side of the road somewhere in Wellington County, and somebody stole the tires or the wheels right off of this trailer thing, and then the county changed the sign to say, "Hey, has anyone seen my wheels?" James will explain this better than I can. It's actually kind of amusing. Coming up next week, I think I mentioned I'm going to be at the Eaton Partner Conference in Fort Lauderdale. There's a little hardware news coming up, a little security news coming up. I can't say what it's about, but we will be writing about all of that on ChannelProNetwork.com.
And that is the place to go, folks. Each and every day, ChannelProNetwork.com is where you'll find the latest news, white papers, articles, resources, downloads, podcasts, all kinds of great stuff that will keep you up to date on what's happening in the industry, or give you sound and sage business advice to help you grow your business and make more money, which is always what we all want. And of course, subscribe to Channel Pro Weekly. That is where you will just have our show magically appear on your phone. We're in every podcast place that I know of. If I've missed one, just send it to us and we'll get us listed if you have a favorite and we're not in it. But the Google, the Apple Podcast, the Stitcher, the Spotify's, we're in all of them as far as I know. So subscribe there, leave a good rating and a comment on the episode. That always helps too. And we're also, of course, on YouTube. You can subscribe to us there. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit all those buttons, and leave a comment on the video as well. That always goes a long way. And thank you for watching. So always good to have those watching. What else am I missing? Follow us on the socials and all that other stuff. And I want to give a big thank you to Ben Pearce, the president founder of it's ACP Technologies. It was on the tip of my tongue. I knew what it was. I just didn't want to mess it up. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you had a good time.
I did. I enjoyed it.
Good. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, get to know you better, learn more about ACP Technologies, partner with you in some way, where can they go? How can they find you?
acp.us.com. So I'm there, and then I'm bpearce@acp.us.com.
And I did mess it up. See, I was looking and I did mess up. I think I said APC. And it's ACP. I am so sorry about that.
That's okay. It's a common mistake that happens all the time. I wish I could use credentials to get into APC sometimes, but it doesn't seem to work.
Well, I meant, at the top of the show, I commented about the number of acronyms in the industry. There's so many of them. I get them all mixed up. But Ben, thank you so much for being on. It was a pleasure, very insightful, and I hope we get to see you again in the future. Also, go ahead.
I said I hope so too.
I as well. We will definitely be in touch. And a big thanks also to Dave MacKinnon at N-able for joining us as well. A great episode. And there will be more, folks. We'll be back in episode 223 next week. See you then.